Welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. When you're ready to transform your sales for today's transforming market, we've got you covered. With your host, the queen of cold calling and founder of Salesology, award-winning author, speaker, sales trainer, and coach, Wendy Weiss.
Hi, welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. And I am your host, Wendy Weiss. I'm the founder of Salesology and the Salesology Prospecting Method. I'm known as the queen of cold calling. And today we have a very special guest. We are talking to Kendra Lee. She is the president of KLA Group. And Kendra has such an interesting story. She is a sales and marketing expert. And she started her sales career in accounting. And then she failed IBM's entry-level sales exam. She was then told she'd be a sales failure without an engineering background. And despite all of that, Kendra entered sales and proved everybody wrong. She turned her knowledge of numbers into a lead generation approach that has propelled SMB companies to succeed. She is the founder and president of KLA Group, which is a sales and marketing agency that helps B2B SMB companies get more customers. And she's the author of Selling Against the Goal and The Sales Magnet. And in the spirit of full disclosure, she is also a really good friend of mine. So I am so happy to have Kendra Lee here with us today. Welcome, Kendra.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. What a wonderful introduction. I could not have asked for any better. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. And I'm so curious. We've known each other for years, but I don't actually know the full Kendra Lee backstory. So would you be good enough to share your story, your backstory with us?
Absolutely. So as you said, I actually started my sales career in accounting. I went to school and got my master's in accounting, and I started in accounting. But when I was in accounting, I really loved it. I loved the numbers, but it didn't feel completely fulfilling for me. And one of my peers walked up and he said, you know what? You should go into sales. And, out of the mouths of your coworker. So I started pursuing sales, but that's when I had to take the IBM engineering test, and I failed. And they looked at me and said, yeah, if you can't pass this test, there's no way you're going to be successful in sales. But I was lucky enough that there was an opportunity that actually came up within IBM where I said, hey, I want to try sales, take me. And my boss looked at me and said, if you're not successful, there's no way back. You'll be let go. And I sat there thinking, well, that's okay. I'm pretty good at what I do. What's the worst that could happen? There's always McDonald's.
Well, you did have a degree in accounting, so there was always that too.
And there was always that too. So I went into sales. And on top of all that, not having been in sales, not only did I decide I wanted to be in sales, but I wanted to be in new business development. I did not want to be in account management. I wanted to find all the new clients that I could sell. And so I got into new business development, and that's where I started my whole sales career.
Very cool. And then at some point you started your own company. How did that come about?
Well, I always knew I wanted to have my own company. And I come from a family of entrepreneurs going generations back. So in my mind, it was never a question of would I, it was just a matter of when would I and what should it be. I had specific goals that I wanted to accomplish. Working for a big company and selling for someone like IBM, it's easy to say, is it me that's good? Or is it just that I've got this great name company, this brand behind me that makes me successful? Even in new business development, opening doors when you've got a big name like that is much easier than it is when you're an SMB company. And so I had in my territory developed a whole process to generate leads. They gave me the worst territory possible. I always called it the pots and pans. I had, bowling alleys and law firms, CPA firms, insurance agents, not the types of companies that you would expect that IBM wants to make sure that they've heavily penetrated. I loved it because they were all SMB clients. But I had to figure out how was I going to make this mammoth quota with all these clients that were basically buying an average sale of $15,000. And my quota was a $9 million quota. So I took my accounting knowledge and I turned it into a lead generation system. And that's what I discovered as I was successful. All of my managers would ask me to train my peers in how I was managing to sell $9 million with an average sale of $15,000 to all these smaller companies and have high client sat. That's when I realized, there might be something bigger here. And that was how I determined what KLA Group should be. We started as a training company, training salespeople how to do lead generation so that they could be successful in new business development.
And what do you do now? That's not exactly what you're doing today, right?
Well, it was kind of interesting. So if you think about it, I started KLA more than 25 years ago. And at the time, salespeople were completely responsible for their new business development. Yes, you had marketing, but it was more advertising, PR. If you were lucky, you got radio spots. We were just starting to do things like lunch and learns. Clearly no webinars because there was no internet, no email because there was no internet. We did direct mail, drop by cold calling, but the salesperson did almost all of it. So we started by training salespeople how to do new business development and how could they use marketing type strategies to drive interest and increase the number of prospects that they had. And I keep saying we because even though I started doing the training, I actually pretty quickly engaged other people who first were contractors and then became employees to work with us. Well, if you think about the evolution of new business development, it moved as the internet came around from the salesperson to now marketing could do more in support of sales. So suddenly all the training that we were doing was shifting over into marketing. And we had to make the decision, well, are we going to stay working with the salespeople? Do we go work with the marketing people? What do we do? And we have, as I evolved the business, we have stayed both in sales because in sales, a prospector has to follow up on the leads that are generated by marketing, and it's the same skills. And as well as now marketing, because all the things that we were training people how to do now is done by marketing. But we now do it for people as opposed to just training them, which is a whole nother fun story, Wendy. When we started training business owners, because we were working with SMB companies, because they're my passion. I just love SMB companies. And there's so much opportunity for helping them grow. Well, when we started training business owners, well, how do you do your marketing? How do you put a marketing plan in place? How do you do your new business development? When do you hire a salesperson? When do you get the salesperson trained? What I discovered is that the business owner would come to the training, they would put together their whole marketing plan, and into the drawer it went, never to see the light of day again. Which is extremely discouraging if you think about it, that you've done all this work together, they've put together a great plan, but they never have time. So from there, we said, all right, if they don't have time to implement it, maybe what we should do is we should put it together for them and then coach them how to implement it. So that was the next step. But even in coaching them, they didn't have time to write their content or to follow up with people. So still time was getting in the way. And that then led us to say, all right, we understand, crying uncle, we will do it for you. So now on the marketing side, all that stuff that I did all those years ago as a salesperson, we now do today for companies where we actually run their marketing, help them generate their marketing qualified leads, turn them over to sales, where the salesperson then takes those marketing qualified leads, uses their great prospecting skills to convert them to sales opportunities and close them. So that's the story of how we got to where we are today.
Okay. And you left out my favorite part, which I'm going to share with all of our listeners, because Kendra started her company, and then once she got going, she hired her husband. And I love that part of your story.
I did. And, one of the reasons is he has extensive account management experience, compensation experience. And so he complemented what we were doing. So it wasn't just that I wanted to work with my husband, Wendy. It's that he had good skills and he was the right hire.
Okay, good. So now let's talk about building a sales organization. I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a long time because this is something that you've actually done.
Yeah.
And so in preparation for our conversation today, I actually Googled how to build a sales organization. And it was very interesting to me because I couldn't actually find much on how to build a sales organization. I found a lot of articles on how to build a sales team. So my first question is that exactly the same thing?
To me, it is not. And if you're thinking of a sales team, you are thinking smaller. And I was just on a call before ours with a client of ours who expects within the next 3 years that their sales organization is going to have 25 people. Today, they're at 4. If you think of only building a sales team, you're only thinking of building that group of people who can go out and do the selling. Whereas the organization is all the people. It's, yes, the people who can do the selling, but it's the different roles that would do the selling. It's the sales support that goes with that. What if you're going to have a sales admin? What if you're going to have somebody in the sales organization who's assisting with the pre-sales technical support? So it's looking more broadly than just at the team who's out there customer facing, but the whole team that is supporting sales. It's that whole organization. So I think there is a difference. We tend to focus primarily on the team because that's the one that you see as revenue generating, not realizing that all those other people surrounding it are helping with it.
Okay. So if, for example, your client that you were speaking with that has 4 people on the team now wants to be 25, like what's step one? Do they run out and hire a bunch more salespeople, or what do they do?
Well, he was very forward thinking. His step one was that he actually sat down and designed the organization chart that he anticipates they will have when they have 25 people. Most people start with saying, what is the role that I need? Interestingly, the first role in building a sales team that we see most frequently is someone who wants a hunter or a business development person. And in fact, almost everybody starts by saying, I need a hunter. I need somebody who's going to go generate new business. But your real first step is to step back and look at what is the job I need done? What are the activities that I need someone to do? And so what is that role? Oftentimes, what we find is that role may be account management. It may be traditional outside sales, where it's a combination of the hunter and the account manager, or it might be sales support, somebody who's going to follow up on renewals, who's going to help with quotes, who may call and get pricing to go into quotes. So it could be any of those. You have to step back and really look at where do we have that gap.
Okay. And so, I mean, I think I hear you saying that step one is looking where the gap is and then hiring somebody to fill it.
Yes.
And so step one is not what your client did and build out the entire organization on paper.
I think that's challenging if you don't know sales. I think it's hard to say this is what my organization will be when I have 25 people in sales. Most companies begin with that very first role and defining what it is and writing a solid job description for that role.
And is that difficult these days? You can't turn on the TV, read the paper. Everybody's talking about how hard it is to hire people. So is that, how does that work when you're trying to put this all together and build your sales organization?
It does not change the role that you need to hire. So you don't want to shift what you think you need. It just may take you longer to find it. We have one client that has started looking for another salesperson. They already have several. He's been looking for a salesperson since January. He is being very careful. We're going through a full assessment process to make sure of the people that he's looking at and he's considering, can they do the job he needs done? But he is staying true to, this is the role I need to hire. So it's not about settling or changing the role. It's being patient because you've determined that is the role that you need. So the business is driving the need for that position.
Okay. And do you find, I was actually reading an article about building a sales team. And one of the things that the author said was to fire super fast, which I kind of agree with. But I'm wondering about your take. What happens if, you've figured out, here's the role I need to fill. You're being very particular and just patient, waiting to hire just the right person. Then they turn out not to be the right person.
So do you fire them is your real question.
That's the real question. What do you do?
I would actually start by answering a few steps ahead of that. So we've defined the job description as step one, and we're being patient in our hiring to hire to that job description. There are 2 steps within your hiring process that you want to have taken that will reduce the chance that you'll need to fire somebody or you'll hire a non-performer. The first one is to assess the candidates and use a standardized assessment tool specifically for salespeople that's looking at the competencies for the role as you have defined it. So now you know what you're getting and you know the gaps of that person as well as where their strengths are. And ideally, you're hiring somebody who has more strengths than gaps. When you know the gaps, then you also know what you need to train for. So step one is make sure you've got the assessment. Step two, to avoid having to hire somebody that might not be able to do it, is to have a strong onboarding process where you have outlined how are you going to onboard this new hire And as part of it, you're looking at their performance all the way straight through. If you know from the assessment where they might have gaps, and you know what they have to be able to do, and you're training to that, you're going to be able to train them more effectively. If, however, as you're going through the onboarding, you find that they can't do the job, then yes, you're going to let them go. We don't want to keep people when we don't think they can do the job.
It's always been very interesting to me how many businesses I run across where I'm talking to the owner or the sales manager, and they'll say, yeah, we've got somebody that we think could use some training. They're just not producing. And oh, that's too bad. How long have they been around? 7 years.
I know.
And
do you set any performance expectations for them? Are you coaching them against those? How are you, what are you doing to help develop them in those 7 years?
Yeah. So I want to ask you about onboarding, training, coaching. We're going to pause here for a moment for a word from our sponsor, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to hold your feet to the fire about onboarding and coaching and training. So now we have a word from our sponsor, Salesology 3X Appointments. You know how frustrating and stressful it is when you leave every sales meeting wondering if your sales team knows how to sell, because they're not selling and all you ever hear from them are excuses. They blame your marketing, they say you need to do more social media, and they say you need a new website. You know something's wrong, but you don't quite know what it is, and you're even starting to wonder if it's you. You don't have a lot of options. You could fire them all and start from scratch. That would be expensive. And you're really just sick of waking up in the middle of the night wondering how to fix this. Well, imagine instead that you have an easy-to-use, replicable system that ensures your team can easily schedule qualified appointments. And imagine that your team is excited and motivated. No more excuses, and you feel really good. Salesology 3X Appointments can make that happen. If you're a business owner or a sales manager with an underperforming sales team, let's talk. Click on the link to my calendar in the show notes and schedule a time. I look forward to meeting you. And we are back with Kendra Lee. Yippee. So Kendra, let's talk about onboarding. You've figured out where the gaps in your organization are, and you're going to hire someone. You've been really patient, waiting for the perfect candidate. You think you found them, you've hired them. Now you have to onboard them. What are the steps? What do you need to do and have in place?
When you're onboarding, there are a certain set of things that you're going to do for every person that you're onboarding. They all need to know your systems. They need to know your internal processes. They need to know the culture of your company, for example. When it comes to your sales team, they need to understand what your solutions are, why people are buying them, how they're using them, how their businesses have changed. They also need to understand how you sell to them. So regardless of the experience of the person that you're hiring, there's still a foundation level of onboarding that you have to do to help speed up their time to productivity. Most business owners think, oh, well, we're going to do 2 weeks of training and we should be able to turn them over to the CRM and they're ready to go. It takes any person a period of time to learn new information, new processes, form new habits, and that does not change when you are hiring an experienced salesperson. So your onboarding plan should include, for a salesperson, how you sell, what you sell, and the value to clients of what you sell. It also should really delve into, for what you sell, all those areas specific to your solutions. So if you have 4 solutions that you sell, then that same information needs to be taught for all 4 of your solutions. You're not going to do that in 2 weeks and have somebody absorb it. You really are looking at onboarding over a 30, 60, and 90-day period. It's a longer time period. And you may have someone like you, Wendy, who is coming in and doing training for them on the process that the client uses that they've adopted from training that you've done from everyone else. So it doesn't have to all fall on that company. There may be others that they engage as part of that training.
Yes, and I'm curious, so how long, you're saying 30, 60, 90 days, are there markers for these 30, 60, 90 days?
I like to see, and I'm going to use the term phones, even though we're not necessarily putting them on the phones, but I like to see a salesperson be on the phone within the first 2 weeks. The longer that you keep a new salesperson away from actual customer-facing activities, the harder it is for them to just pick it up. They start worrying, do I know everything I need to know? Oh, I need more training. So while I'm saying that we're going to train over 30, 60, 90 days, they're still starting to do their regular job. It's just there are additional things that you are training them as they are doing that job. The markers are going to be based on the performance expectations that you put in place before you actually hire them. And the performance expectations tie to the job description. So if we're hiring, let's say, a hunter, we know we want them to make a certain number of calls or the outreaches, however they're doing it. They may be using LinkedIn, email. As we come out of COVID, they may actually be doing drop-by cold calling, but we know there's going to be a certain number of outreaches. We know we want them to be able to get a certain number of appointments, and eventually they've got a certain number of opportunities in their pipeline. And so you're going to have markers aligned with those performance expectations and the training, because we have to have trained them to be able to do those things. Even though they're experienced salespeople, can they do it for us? And so your markers align with what your expectations would be for the job.
I love that you want to get people on the phone quickly. One of the things that we always say to our clients, especially if they've hired someone new, they're not coming to the business with, say, a book of business that they're just bringing along with them. You can make them revenue generating pretty quickly if you teach them to prospect and set up meetings.
Yep.
And somebody that knows the solutions, knows what they're doing, can actually go on the meeting. But that new hire can be productive and revenue generating pretty darn quickly. And if they can't do that, you probably made a bad hire.
If they were supposed to be a hunter, then yeah, it's a bad hire. And the thing about what you just said is, so they're on the phone within 2 weeks and they're bringing someone else along. Okay, well, our first month is all about how are they going to get those first appointments? What's the level of information they need? Well, month 2 can be, now what's the level of information they need for the first appointment when they go out and they're going with this person? And month 3 may be, well, what's the level of information they need so that they could do a proposal, or so that they can do a demo if they have to do that. So you can see how you can actually align it with what they're learning as they go through the actual sales process. And you can see their progress, set your performance expectations to align with that.
So I'm curious, in your experience, what percentage of the clients or businesses that you work with actually follow the model that you're outlining?
The clients that we are working with and coaching through their hiring process all follow that.
I probably phrased my question poorly. If they're your clients, of course they're following.
If they're not our clients, then it's a lower percentage. Because it's interesting. And I talk about business owners because we work primarily with SMB companies. So often, until you've built your sales organization, it is business owners who are responsible for the salesperson or people. They report to them till they get large enough to hire a sales manager. Well, the business owners start and they say, I hired an experienced salesperson. They assessed really well. They should be able to do this. In 2 weeks, they've got it. They caught on really fast. I don't need to do the rest of that onboarding. And so they let them go too quickly. And they may not have consistent sales meetings. They may not do shadowing. They may not set the salesperson up for success. And that's when the salesperson really flounders.
Well, I've read that it takes something like 6 weeks to embed a new habit. So even if you've got a very experienced salesperson, they still need to embed the new habits of the new company.
Exactly. What your process is. They can adapt all their sales skills and their experience, but they still need to understand what's your process. When do we engage technical resources? Who's going to help me with the quoting? How long should it take? They still need to understand all of that, along with how they handle the objections and what the core messaging is.
So is it different? I know you work primarily with SMB companies. Is it different what you've been describing, an SMB company versus, say, an enterprise level company? Is it different?
The need for the onboarding is not different at all. What may be different is an enterprise company probably has that onboarding in place and has the resources that a manager can draw on. So all the manager needs to do is make sure that they are adhering to that process. What happens in an enterprise company, things that could slip are they may not be doing the shadowing and the coaching and the guiding the way that they should for that new hire. So that's where in enterprise they might slip.
Okay. So, Kendra, I could talk to you about this all day long. I know we can't do that, but I would like to. So put your hand over your heart and promise me you'll come back another day and we can continue the conversation.
Absolutely. There's so many different things we always talk about, Wendy. I would enjoy that.
Okay. And I know that you have a gift for our listeners. So would you share that?
Absolutely. So we have talked a lot about hiring hunters and we've talked about onboarding. One of the key things that your sales team needs, all of them, as well as your marketing, is a very clear understanding of what your messaging is. The sooner that you can give a new sales rep your messaging, the faster they will be able to get on the phones or go to meetings and be successful. So the resource that I have is to help you define what your messaging is. Because interestingly, a lot of companies struggle with it. I can't tell you how many I talk to who say, I don't know what our differentiation is. We're no different than everybody else in our business. And yet you are. And so the resource I have is to help you define your messaging, use it in sales, and use it in marketing.
Yes, you want to be consistent in your messaging in sales and marketing.
Exactly.
So we're going to put the link to Kendra's gift in the show notes. So make sure to check out the show notes and click on the link to get your gift from Kendra Lee. And so to finish up today, make sure to check out the links, share us on social media, and please do tell your friends. Give us good reviews. And thank you for listening to the Salesology Conversations with Sales Leaders podcast. Till we meet again, Visualize yourself surrounded by cash, really large bills.
You've been listening to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. Be sure to follow so that you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share it with your friends. Tune in every week for more exciting insights and wisdom on transforming sales. And until next time, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, very large bills.